This week, get online to get the scoop on worldwide actions happening offline. Valentine's Day might be over, but Beyond Extreme Energy wants you to keep spreading some love. Fuck mincing words on the TPP. Plastic Jesus wants you to question your beliefs. And do you vote with your brain or your genitals? But first, an ode to every woman. Her fingers settled gently on her other wrist. Clasped like this, her quiet hands rested just so perfectly in front, as if evolution had taken note to protect from intruders with this simple gesture. My dear, just put down your hands. My gaze followed the curve, that swerve from meeting hands to outer orbits, the graceful bend of hips curving home to heart and soul, a waist not whittled, neither little nor big. No, these adjectives are shit. The dumbest common low, below the heights of shape that warp the mind, move the eye with every line and whisper to the soul. Wow. The arms that placed those hands that held those fingers now demand a level of attention worthy of my mention, collar bones that heave and hoe with each and every breath. The chest that marks the life force of this life force and my own. As human and as human being held, a mass crescendo I won't quell. I don't know how to. Her knee then bends as if to say there's half of me that wants amends. Don't forget these lines that draw the basis of it all. A pedestal for this above and yet no simple columns awe. The awesome is the strength and grace. Again I dutifully trace. Imperfections perfectly placed. I find myself battling the pleasure I did crown to stone-cold statues made to be profound. What I admire there is how you carve a human out of stone. I can't recall, or it was rare, where I would stop and trace those same sweet lines that here in these few moments I do find. But this is inspiration, so close related like art without a frame. I stand in awe of this creation. Stop before you call it God. There is no being that can call this wonderment his work. No, this is millions of years and accidents, a happenstance of perfect random gears acting to accomplish two that made this one that now has made herself. Has carved her own from evolution's stone, has built the beauty that I now recount to you, my duty. To share the pride of woman, from no absolutist place of power, no will to siege, to rape, to keep, no will to make her something she is not, to take her, or the perfect lines that make her, to draw her in an object's trace, to fill her in with what I think she should be for you, for me. Her fingers flicker gently on her other wrist, the power in her stance, the grace, protecting that which nature never meant to waste. On patriarchal fiends who know not what it means to be, not just to bleed or birth. This is not her function, but a possibility. She is far beyond the lack of contemplation that does breed inside the minds of stupid men who fear what lies behind those fingers guarded in their clasp. No, they just cannot grasp what it means to be a beautiful woman like the one that I do see. A mirror window, hard to tell, these curves do intersect. I speak of you, I speak of me, the lines with which we do define our own humanity, our womanhood. Do not let the powers that be place your goddess self in hands of gods who don't believe in you. Do not let these shriveled souls define the appropriateness of every line, and let not takers of your beauty be the reason you do stand, with fingers clasped, afraid to drop your hands. Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. We have a few things to cover on the front lines this week, so let's just get right to it. First off, let's start with something that anyone, anywhere can get into. Viewers of this show have probably heard me mention 350.org before, the global grassroots environmental group that helped organize several of the actions in Paris during COP21, among other things. Well, this year, they and a broad coalition of other groups, including Greenpeace International, are ramping up their direct actions and targeting of dirty energy through a week of worldwide action called Break Free from Fossil Fuels. Between May 7th and May 15th, activists around the globe will mobilize in coordinated and pointed efforts to call out, confront, and shut down the world's worst fossil fuel projects, from here to Nigeria to Germany to the Philippines and back again. Today, Wednesday, February 17th at 1 p.m. Eastern, you can join an online web workshop discussing tools and preliminary plans for this wave of action. You can ask questions via the website, and for those of you watching this broadcast way past 1 p.m. Eastern on the 17th, have no fear. The workshop will be recorded and you can access it later via the same site. And we will post a link to that on our Facebook page, and you can also get that information via the link below, which reads, for those of you not looking at the screen, breakfree2016.org/thisishowwebreakfree, separated by dashes. Now, for those of you still in a love-induced haze of Valentine's Day, corporatized days, buy more shit craze, I have something that only costs you a stamp, an envelope, a piece of paper, and maybe some arts and crafts add-ons, if you so choose. You may recall that I've mentioned FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, on this show before, and their most loud, proud, and worthy adversary, Beyond Extreme Energy. Well, starting last week and continuing this week, BXE is sending out Valentine's Day cards to the FERC commissioners with a holiday-themed message that you probably won't find at Hallmark. We are protecting what we love, and we want you to do the same. On the BXE site, you can find not only the sample Valentine's Day card, complete with sweet somethings like Be Mines, Not Pipelines, and Climate Chaos, the ultimate turnoff, but you'll also get the addresses for all FERC commissioners, including where they stay in DC, because yes, they have multiple residences. Heart emoji, corporate donors. There are also direct links to post your Valentine cards on Twitter and Facebook, and you can check out our Facebook to see said FERC card, take a snapshot of the full screen that you just saw, or go to beyondextremeenergy.org and follow the prompts there. Happy Valentine's Day, you corporate ass buckets. I'm sure you look forward to seeing more people calling out your corruption at the monthly FERC meetings tomorrow. Oh, yes. And that reminds me, if you happen to be in the DC area, be sure to head down to the monthly FERC meeting to make your opposition to fracking and profit over people and planet clear. You can also find more information about these truth interruptions, as they're called, on BXE's website. And speaking of websites, you all need to be made aware of this little gem. As you'll be able to tell, a website design after my own heart. Fuckthetpp.com. This site is, for lack of a better phrase, fucking awesome. Created by web designer Charlie Furman, Fuck the TPP not only allows you to click through a myriad of reasons why the TPP is some grade A bullshit, but prompts you to take action. Gives you links to more in-depth analysis of this corporate catastrophe, options to share on social media, and options to share more reasons why you hate the TPP. All I can say is fucking A. Awesomely, awesomely, awesomely well done. As Charlie wrote in his introduction of the site on Facebook, I'm tired of mincing words on the TPP, so I made this. Serious props to you, my friend, and there, everyone, you have yet another example of creative activism in practice. Now, speaking of not mincing words on things, our guest this week has made a name for himself, or made a name for his pseudonym, by boldly and unapologetically calling out everything, from capitalism to the vapidity of celebrity. Plastic Jesus brings a myriad of issues to light in often cynical, sarcastic ways, asking you to think, oh my god, think, yes, think, about how you view the world, and many aspects within it, using various mediums from your more typical idea of street art to actual installations literally stopping people in their tracks as they wander the streets of LA. And while it's pretty clear where his socio-political mind stands, the visual representation and unconventional illustration of these issues gives them a depth and a complexity rarely seen in the City of Angels. Take a look.
There's a number of ways of doing things. You can write, fuck the government who 5-foot-high letters down a wall, or you can create a street installation, which effectively does the same. A piece I produced about 18 months ago was an 8-foot by 4-foot mousetrap, with its place in the cheese was a pile of credit cards. The piece was called Credit Trap. Now, at the end of the day, the piece says fuck the banks, but it does it in a much more kind of subtle way. So I think by using different medium, be it sculptures, paints, whatever, you can connect with people in different ways.
And so that everybody gets a slightly different message, but it's obviously very clear that you're saying fuck the banks, like with that piece that you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. The importance of what I'm getting at is not necessarily the technical ability of what's there, but it's the message behind it. I mean, there's some amazing artists that do some stunning murals. Generally, they'll be round in the back alleyway behind retail stores in LA or New York or wherever. And you stand back and you're blown away by the technical content of them and the skill of the artist. But you look at it and say, well, what does it mean? Now, work is kind of on the other end of the spectrum. I want it to mean something, even though it's not technically great.
So a lot of, and even outside like the idea of fuck the banks and fuck the government, a lot of your work focuses on the ridiculous nature of celebrity, and of course you're in Los Angeles, which is quite the place to focus on that. Talk a little bit about the lack of creative intellect in these industries and why you choose to highlight that.
Well, I highlight it because so many people are critical of, for example, as we're talking, celebrities. So many people will stand there and in the conversation, engage in a conversation that, the Kardashians or Kanye or whoever, this is trash that we're being fed. But, we're still the people that consume it. If there was no market for this trash, then commercial companies would not produce it. And, if a commercial company can produce a movie or a TV show or, a tabloid magazine, they're going to want to sell as much as they can of it. And, there's a clear defined route to do this. Unfortunately, I think that kind of jars and contradicts with what most of us believe is good, be it in entertainment, in culture, and in so many other areas of life, but we're prepared to sit there and consume it.
So as a street artist and as somebody who's obviously lives in that world, do you see what do you see the trajectory of street art being? Do you see people starting to consume more of that underground, more of that alternative feel as opposed to tabloids and things like that? I mean, for corporatized news, for example, the bulk of their audience is over 65. Do you think something like that is happening with the creative and art world?
Well, I think there's been a lot of disenfranchised people in the last few decades, from the 80s upwards, that felt they'd had no involvement in culture and politics on a street level. Now, I think things are changing, and we can see that with the primaries that are going on at the moment, where people are saying, hey, we can actually make a difference with what we're doing. And I think street art is really tapping into that. But the irony of it is now is that street art is becoming mainstream, and I must admit some people that buy and collect my street art are as conformist as you can imagine.
So you mentioned when I first, sort of shifting gears here, you mentioned when I first reached out to you that you align yourself a lot with the ideas of the Occupy movement. So I'm curious to hear what specifically you align yourself with, and was that the beginning of? You said you started with the Stop Making Stupid People Famous in 2008, but did your political artwork sort of feel a surge with the Occupy movement, or were you already doing that before?
So, in terms of the Occupy movement and timing of my art, I didn't jump on the Occupy bandwagon. I've always been, I suppose, frustrated by a lot of culture, a lot of politics, a lot of society. I've been a photojournalist for 20 years. I've traveled all over the world photographing news stories, including investigations into things like people trafficking, drug smuggling, money laundering, institution, this kind of thing. And whilst working for large media organizations, I've always felt there was, this underlying unease with conveying the corporate message of these organizations. And that's really what I set out to do with street art from the first piece I created, was there to really question our thinking, question our acceptance. And whilst the Occupy movement was engaging people, I felt that my work could act in a different way in terms of be more of a catalyst rather than a direct action type of system or message. So I wouldn't imagine for 1 minute I personally would change much in the world. But if a piece of my art can be a catalyst for somebody else who can then reach out to somebody else, and people can then start thinking and reconsidering their beliefs, then, that's what I hope for. I want people to look inside themselves, look at their belief systems and their thoughts and their understanding, and become engaged, become empowered, and actually to step out of this kind of nice, cozy, comfortable zone that you're in, where nobody complains or steps out, to question society, and people start questioning. It might be in a very small way about something locally in community. It might be a broader approach to a huge global problem. But if enough people kind of start addressing these problems, things will change.
So how do you think that the role of particularly street art, because of course, I mean, as you said, it's becoming mainstream, which I guess we can definitely think is a bad thing, but in terms of promoting these ideas of a movement pushing for social and political change, what do you see the role of art being in that?
Well, I think art is huge, because any piece of art that is any good should come from a place of passion and emotion. I always try to get my pieces to connect with as many people as possible. I get criticised that by some of the street art community, saying my pieces are just commercial, populist, whatever. But what is the point of a message if you're not going to reach out to as many people as possible with that piece?
Right, it's that idea of like meeting people where they're at and not trying to assume that everyone's just going to understand because they should, kind of idea.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the best outcome for my pieces possibly can be not for somebody to say, yeah, that's right, but people to actually say, yeah, actually, what am I thinking about this? And actually consider their own beliefs. So I want people to start a questioning process. Yeah, you'll see a lot of my pieces, as I said, the big credit card piece, the big mousetrap piece, didn't say fuck the bank. But it carried the same message, so people will start thinking, yeah, I've got $20, $30, $50, $100,000 in credit card back debt, and this is exactly how I feel. And by questioning it, rather than saying, banks are, the banking system's fucked, I think you can achieve way more.
Yeah, and of course, even just that piece, it speaks to so many different situations. The picture being worth 1,000 words, it could speak to credit card debt due to foreclosure, or due to student loans, or it could speak to so many different types of situations that, whereas fuck the banks could just be written off as an angsty teenager or something.
Yeah, totally. I mean, quite a few number of my pieces also address drugs in society and drug use. And are we really so stupid that for the next decade, 2 decades, 5 decades, we're going to continue with the same policies on drugs and the so-called war on drugs that we have now that clearly isn't working? It's costing billions, it's costing lives, it's costing societies, etc., etc., etc. And I want to engage people with that in a conversation as well, because the conversation isn't happening right now.
Right, like the piece that you did, the giant dollar bill, and also the golden statue doing lines.
Well, exactly. The first Oscar statue I did was a full-size upright Oscar statue injecting his left arm with heroin. It was shortly after Philip Seymour Hoffman's death, and so many people were shocked that he was a heroin addict. They considered heroin was this dirty drug that people, in these burned down, squat houses consumed. Never for 1 minute did so many people think that a professional, well-presented, presentable actor, celebrated actor could be a heroin addict. When I did that piece and the cocaine Oscar piece the following year, I was a little bit concerned about the reaction that I would get, and probably 99% of the reaction I got from both pieces was incredibly positive.
Yeah, I mean, they are incredibly powerful, and particularly when you see them out particularly in a place like Hollywood, it's an incredibly powerful message. So final question, I'm curious with your street art, and this goes for the the Oscar pieces as well, but also for the pieces like the white and colored. How do you decide where they go? I mean, LA is such a huge place. So many different neighborhoods with different people, like different groups of people, classes of people, races, religions that live there. How do you decide where your art goes in the city?
Well, in a perfect world, I could put my pieces wherever I wanted. I mean, to have the Oscar pieces right on Hollywood Boulevard, right outside the theatre where the ceremony was taking place would have been amazing, but it's just not practical. Ideally, in fact, have it on Hollywood Boulevard, kind of 100 feet away from where the event was taking place. And again, this year, the segregated drinking fountain piece that I did last week, I would have loved to put that outside the Academy walls, their offices in Beverly Hills, but it wasn't practical. So generally, I opt for somewhere that has some relevance, but if possible, if that's not possible, I go for somewhere which has a high volume of traffic. Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles here has between 30 and 50,000 people traveling along it each day. And for me, the importance of that is, if I can get my message out to 10,000 people or so in a day, great. But if those people are then using social media to get their message out further, that is so much more empowering for me.
So there you have it. Question your beliefs as often as you can, and if you're in LA, Plastic Jesus will help you along that path. For more information on Plastic Jesus and his awesome array of work, check out plasticjesus.net. And if you're in the LA area, look out for some of his work this week, seeing as the Grammys were on Monday. I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see one of his pieces lurking close to the halls of the vapid and shallow. Now then, moving on, I just have to dole out this Lowlife Scum Award on behalf of brains, in this case, over vaginas.
You lowlife scum.
So, vaginas. We've talked about them before, and I even mentioned them slightly in this week's spoken word. They're great. I'm a big fan. Here's the thing, though. They don't know much about politics. My vagina is blissfully ignorant regarding issues of income inequality, environmental justice, GMOs, student debt, the military-industrial complex. She might have an inkling about healthcare, but that's only because we have long talks about it in the doctor's office. But her job is not to be political. Her job is to be my vagina. My brain's job, however, is to be political, to be politically and socially aware. Now, as opposed to vaginas, brains are something that men have as well. Wired differently, perhaps, but no less capable of being socially or politically aware. And when you go to the polls, you should not only vote for a brain, you should use your brain to vote for that other brain. What am I talking about? Well, as was the case when Hillary ran against Obama way back in 2008, many women are standing up now and saying that it's the duty of all women to vote for a woman because we need a woman in the White House. Now, let's break that down for a second. Yes, I would love to have a woman in the White House who isn't just sitting next to the president and shaking the hands of diplomats. But does that mean we'll accept any woman? No. The quality of woman matters here because the quality of president matters. Now again, I am not going to stand here, or sit here, and say vote for Bernie. I'm not going to stand here and compare Hillary Clinton to Sarah Palin because, but I will stand here, and sit here, and say look at facts, not genitals. Look at who's bankrolling who. Look at track records. Look at details like how staffers and interns are treated. Look at the people running the campaign and the outside friendships. Business relationships and ties. Look at how the candidates back up what they say, because both you and I know that what is said on the campaign trail means about as much as the I love you that you drunkenly spewed to the bartender when he gave you an on-the-house shot. Don't fall for empty campaign promises, and do not fall for the ironically anti-feminist move of suggesting that because someone has a vagina, they need to think with it. I mean, did all black people vote for Obama? Were they supposed to? Were they obligated to vote for him because of the color of their skin and his skin? And if you answered no to any of these questions, then logic would follow that you would answer no to the question of voting for a woman because of her genitalia. So, do not listen to the ass buckets who would try to guilt you into voting with your vagina or voting for a vagina because you're a feminist man. All this means is that they lack the intellectual capacity to vote with anything but their own genitalia. And that's not who you want to be taking advice from. In terms of who you should be taking advice from, might I suggest that we all... Yes, Google that shit, my friends, because believe it or not, there are a lot of facts and intelligent posts and articles written by intelligent people who know their shit out there on the interwebs. So here are a few examples of things that you can Google with each candidate's name. And if you think that there are only two, might I suggest that you also Google some third-party offerings, just to expand your horizons and offer some much-needed spice to the two-party system life. So let's just take a quick sampling here. There's plenty more that you can research, but this will give you a nice head start, nice icebreaker. So first off, let's enter the candidate name and then biggest donors, because those are the people that they'll have to pay back later. Ain't nothing for free in this system. Then in that same vein, let's try typing in candidate name Wall Street ties. Okay, once you got that, try this one. Candidate name Prison Industrial Complex. How about candidate name GMO? Candidate name healthcare. Candidate name minimum wage. This block of info should keep you busy for a long time, but please do branch out. There are so many issues that I didn't mention just now that might be closer to your heart, so you should Google the shit out of those two. Peruse the articles that come up, although I strongly recommend that you avoid corporatized and propagandized media outlets. Check where people are getting their facts from. Check different links and different outlets. Get a little down and dirty in the depths of political digging. Smear that information all over yourself like you're starring in a cheesy beauty regimen ad. And then go out into the world and share that shit. Spread it around like non-GMO seeds in a windstorm. Build up your knowledge base and then, as they say, don't hide it, divide it. So now that you have plenty to divide post-fact diving mission, we will wrap up this week's Dose of Dissent. Thank you so much for watching. Please spread and share this episode with all of your friends, foes, and people you don't know. As usual, check out the last slide to see all of the sites that I mentioned in this week's show, and be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. From the snow-covered Devil's Den, good night, and act out.